Welcome back to America's Newsroom. I'm Sandra Smith.
Time flies, right? Third hour. Here we go. I'm Bill Hemmer. Good morning. Lawmakers reaching an agreement in principle. That's in quotes on border security funding. And while it reportedly provides some money for fencing, it is billions of dollars short of what the president wanted in the beginning for the wall. Here's Hogan Gidley, from the White House with us last hour. Check it out.
Let's talk about the expectations of the American people, and that's that they want safety and security. They demand it from their federal government. That's where the president is. He's going to do everything within his legal authority and power to protect us as citizens of this country, and that's where he wants to be. So until we actually see this language, it's very difficult to say what the president will or won't do.
White House correspondent John Roberts picks it up from there. It's Tuesday. John, good day to you. What's happening?
Bill, good morning to you. At this moment, the White House is going through what it knows of the details of the plan that the conferees came up with in the last 24 hours. In terms of the money, it is about the same as what the president rejected just before Christmas time, about $1.3 billion for 55 miles of border fencing. But it is $1.3 billion more than Nancy Pelosi had said that she was willing to give. Democrats have also reportedly given up on their idea of capping ICE detention spaces at 16,500. They'll actually increase the number of beds by 5,000 over fiscal year 2018, and they will give ICE the flexibility to plus up to about 58,500 spaces in total. That is more than the 52,000 that the president wanted. Here's the Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell.
It had been clear to everyone that in order to reach an agreement, our Democratic colleagues would have to walk away from two extreme positions that had been dictated to them, presumably by the far left.
Speaking to Fox News' Laura Ingraham last night, the president seemed intrigued.
Well, I can tell you that a lot of things have changed, and we'll see what happens. I can't go into the exact deal. I just heard it very quickly.
Conferees are enthusiastic about the chances of getting legislation passed this week. Other lawmakers, like Kevin Brady, the ranking member of the Ways and Means Committee in the House, are taking a wait-and-see approach.
I think, like others, I'm withholding my judgment till we can see the details. Look, the dollar amount for the barriers looks like a down payment, but what we know from these big spending bills is you want to dig deeper into them.
But the Senate Minority Leader, Chuck Schumer, urged the president to agree to what the committee has come up with, even though Schumer acknowledged he doesn't know all the details. Listen here.
No one gets everything they want in these agreements. The president must sign it and not cause another shutdown.
So the president's got a couple of options here. He could reject the whole thing, shut down the government again, maybe even declare an emergency to build the wall, or he could accept the $1.3 billion as kind of a down payment and then use some of the other money that the Office of Management and Budget has identified that could be reallocated from its currently appropriated purpose to building a wall. But, Bill, that would likely provoke howls of outrage on Capitol Hill.
All right, John, thank you on that. John Roberts kicking off a new hour. Thank you, sir. Sandra.
For more on all this, let's bring in House Minority Whip Congressman Steve Scalise. Great to have you this morning. It is a big morning. After a big night last night, a tentative deal's been reached. The president's expected to be looking that over and making his decision. It's tough to tell what happens next. What do you think?
Well, good morning, Sandra. And yeah, I agree. And frankly, the president ought to be looking at the details, because that, to me, is my, where my first question starts is, number one, we have to have the ability to build more wall. That's got to be part of a final deal. And also, there are limitations in law, for example, in the Rio Grande area, where our Border Patrol agents say they need to build more wall, and the law prevents them from doing that. We need to remove some of those limitations so that they can actually build wall where it's most effective to stop the drugs and human trafficking from coming into the United States. And then ultimately, this whole idea of capping detention beds was ludicrous. I mean, you've got terrorists and criminals who we detain. If ICE agents need to detain and ultimately send those people back to the countries they came from because they've broken laws and committed violent crimes in America, there should be no limitation on that. Those are the kind of things I'm looking at. I haven't spoken to the president yet, and I look forward to speaking to him later today to make sure that those things that need to be in the bill are there.
Based on what we know, what would you like to see him do here?
Well, number one, I'd like to see him do what he's doing right now, and that is look at the details. Does the bill allow him to build more wall where he needs to build more wall, where the law currently prevents him from building that wall? And does it give him the flexibility within the Homeland Security Department to be able to ultimately detain and send people back to their countries if they come here and they're terrorists, they commit violent crimes. Pelosi wanted to limit that number of beds. That was ridiculous. That can't be in a final agreement. So all of those things are things I know I'll be looking at. I'm sure the president is looking at.
Yeah, and Mitch McConnell was making that very clear. You heard in the lead in there earlier this morning talking about it's clear to everyone that in order to reach an agreement, he said, our Democratic colleagues would have to walk away from two extreme positions that had been dictated to them, presumably by the far left. Who's running the show there, Congressman?
Well, you've seen elements of the far left really controlling a lot of the agenda in Nancy Pelosi's first few weeks. I mean, you just look at some of the other extreme things they're doing, some of the harsh anti-Semitic comments that are being made by some of their members. This push to have almost abortion on demand even after the baby is born. We're moving, of course, with Ann Wagner's bill, the Born Alive bill, to say if somebody's born alive, if that baby's born alive, it would be murder to take that life. It shouldn't be legal in states like New York or Virginia. Those kind of extreme positions, and while they don't want any new wall, they don't want the president to be able to even detain criminals that are caught committing violent crimes in America and sending them back.
I know those are all
that's
issues.
The extreme position they've been taking.
Those are all issues very close to your heart and that you're currently working on. You also have some strong reaction when it comes to the freshman Democratic Congressman Omar. And her recent views of being anti-Semitic. She's been tweeting about this. There's been a back and forth. The president mentioned her last evening. And you wrote this on your Twitter page. Good that some Dems have condemned the disgraceful anti-Semitic remarks of Rep. Omar, but their words are empty unless Dem leaders remove her from the Foreign Affairs Committee, on which she sits, obviously. No one with her anti-Semitic views should be allowed to represent U.S. foreign policy on that committee. Saw that yesterday, Congressman. Where do you stand this morning? Do you stand by that?
Same place. I mean, think about this. Right now, she sits on the Foreign Affairs Committee. She's able to get classified briefings on foreign policy, especially as it relates to Israel. And yet she's made statements, anti-Israel, anti-Jewish statements, aligned herself with anti-Semitic people as well. She should be removed from the Foreign Affairs Committee. That's something Nancy Pelosi should do immediately. That kind of action. Look what she said about AIPAC. AIPAC is a non-political organization. Republicans, Democrats, conservatives, liberals are part of that organization to help educate people about the importance of our great relationship between the United States and Israel. And she's blasting them, calling them a political organization. Clearly, she doesn't understand what they stand for. They don't make political contributions, and she implied they do. She needs to learn more about these issues that she's trying to speak out on. And in the meantime, she shouldn't be sitting on the Foreign Affairs Committee.
And to be clear, she has unequivocally, in her words, apologized for those comments. She
well,
went
think
on
about this, Sandra. She unequivocally apologized, and then she went after those same groups.
Right.
So clearly it wasn't unequivocal, and she doesn't take those comments back because she went and blasted the groups that she initially apologized for.
All right, we've got to leave it there, Congressman. A couple seconds left. Optimism level, 1 to 10, a deal gets done by Friday.
Oh, well, I want to wait and see what the president says about this, and does it achieve those objectives. We got to build more wall. We can't have limitations. Let our experts do the job they need to do to keep our country safe.
Countdown is on. Congressman Steve Scalise, great to have you here. Good to see you, sir. Thank you.
Great being with you, Sandra. Go Tigers.
Officers in the border town of Eagle Pass, Texas, starting to process some migrants from the caravan that just arrived across the border about a week ago. Casey Stiegel's watching that story. Eagle Pass, Texas, with more. Casey.
Hey, Bill, good morning. This show of force, as it is being called, has been building in this community since we've been here and since members of the caravan arrived about a week ago. But there have been no clashes with police, and I've got to say things look as if they are pretty organized. Now, Fox News was given an invitation by U.S. Customs and Border Protection to get an up-close and personal look at the extra security measures that have been put into place. What you're looking at is video from on top of the main international bridge which connects the two countries. One of the primary concerns is that a large group could attempt to rush the border to gain access into the U.S., and here is their response for that scenario. What are being called port hardening measures are in effect on the main international crossing bridge here. First of all, these giant shipping containers have been brought in. These can be moved around to keep large crowds at bay. You have all of the additional officers, and then these makeshift concertina wire fences that can be moved into place to seal the border off, down to the riot shields. Basically, they are prepared for anything that could potentially arise here. Now, just yesterday, while we were there, this very first group from the caravan arrived at the United States side for processing. We're told that the system is so backed up, it took a full week just getting through those who were already in line ahead of them. Until then, they are waiting at a large warehouse-turned-shelter over in Piedras Negras. But because the port here on the U.S. side is small, the space is very limited, and even with extra resources, it's limited. Officials say that they can process a maximum of 20 people a day. Bill?
Thank you, Casey. Casey Stegall there, Eagle Pass, Texas.
All right, we're going to take you live to Michigan, and the funeral of former Congressman John Dingell. Former Vice President Joe Biden will be among those speaking at services today. We're going to have more on this coming up.
Remembering a big life. Also, President Trump slamming the Green New Deal, and it's one of its main architects in Texas last night. Now the Congresswoman firing back at him. Wyoming Senator John Barrasso, one of the first Republicans to call out the plan to fight global warming on behalf of Democrats. We'll talk to Senator Barrasso coming up shortly here.
All right, plus 4 staffers resigning after sexual assault allegations against Virginia's lieutenant governor. We're going to talk to Republican State Senator Amanda Chase on the political crisis facing Democrats in that key swing state.
Democrats must also address the double standard on full display in Virginia. By the way, that state's going to go Republican pretty soon, I'm pretty sure.
Developing matter in Venezuela. Thousands in the streets of Caracas, the capital city, protesting the government of President Nicolas Maduro, who is hanging on as of now. They are supporters of the opposition leader Juan Guaido, whom the U.S. and many Latin American countries, many European countries, has recognized as the legitimate president. We're watching this. Crowds in the street. Developments coming up shortly here as we get them on America's Newsroom.
Fox News alert from Virginia now, where 4 staffers in the lieutenant governor's office have resigned after 2 women accused Justin Fairfax of sexual assault. Virginia State Senator Amanda Chase calling for the women's voices to be heard. In a statement saying this, the women involved in Lieutenant Governor Justin Fairfax's allegations must be heard in the jurisdiction where the incidents occurred. Due process must be followed to ensure both parties the right of innocence until proven guilty. Senator Chase joins us now from Richmond. Good morning to you, and thank you for coming on the program this morning. If you could just start off by letting us know where you stand on the issue this morning.
Well, good morning, and thanks so much for having me on this morning. Yes, I do represent thousands of women in my district and across Virginia. Their voices deserve to be heard. And I think the important thing to remember here is that we've faced a situation before with the Brett Kavanaugh situation when all the Democrats were immediately asking for him to not be considered for that nomination. And I think cool heads prevail, and that we need to focus on due process, not allegations. I want the facts. I want to get to the bottom of things. All the women deserve to be heard. Their voices need to be heard. And I think that's the most important thing, is that we need to demand for facts, not allegations, but facts. And that's what our decisions here in the General Assembly should be based on, those facts and due process.
It's been a tumultuous time for Virginia and the leaders there and politics. I mean, characterize the situation as it is today with, as we know, still the governor even refusing calls to step down.
Absolutely. Well, you know, it is very troubling. Here in the General Assembly, we are citizen legislators representing the Commonwealth of Virginia. We all have jobs back home, and we're here for either a 45-day or 60-day session to get the work of the people done. Just this week and last week, we've been working on passing a $1 billion tax cut to the people of Virginia. And we're here busy. All of the rest of us here are focused on doing the will of the people, getting them that tax cut back, working on health care cost reduction options to reduce the cost of health care. We've been working on coal ash solutions for the state of Virginia for the first time in Virginia's history. We are coming up with solutions for these issues, and we only have 2 weeks left, so we have a lot on the stake here on behalf of the citizens back home, and we want to make sure the women are heard. I represent women, obviously, and I'm going to make sure their voices are heard. I want to make sure that is a transparent, swift process in place in which the facts come out. And I do want to emphasize the facts.
And I think that's fair, and everybody would like to see the facts come out in this. And when it comes to Virginia Lieutenant Governor Justin Fairfax and his accusers in the format in which we will hear the facts and hear from them, this is from the lawyer for the second Fairfax accuser. And that lawyer is calling for public hearings, saying this. Meredith Watson asked the Virginia legislature to hold hearings regardless of what they are called, and to reject a secret and delayed proceeding. Both victims of his sexual assault have agreed to testify, and they will produce witnesses and documents to show their honesty and good character. I just wanted to get your reaction to that before I move on what's next for Virginia. Go ahead.
Yes. So with 2 weeks left before we adjourn, I will tell you that it is my desire to make sure both sides are heard. There are two sides to every story. The women need to be heard. We need to hear their side of the situation, hear the facts, not just allegations. But I will say this for victims, because I have worked with victims of domestic violence, sexual violence, and in the past, is we want to make sure when the victims do tell their story that it's done so in a way that is respectful, that it's done so in a way that counts. And so I want to make sure whether that's if they're going the criminal option, that they proceed by going through North Carolina or Massachusetts, or if it's a situation where, they're simply, trying to express the confidence that we have in our executive branch, which is very troubling right now. We need to decide the best interest of the Commonwealth going forward. We're about the people's business, and that's what our focus needs to be on right now.
And as far as Fairfax is concerned, he's forcefully denying the allegations against him. He says he has nothing to hide, and we know he's demanding an investigation. He wants an FBI investigation into these matters, and we haven't heard the FBI's response to that yet. We thank you for coming on the program this morning. Virginia State Senator Amanda Chase, thanks.
Thank you.
Outside, some more winter storms blasting a big part of the Midwest. Millions are feeling it today. Also here in the Northeast, what they are getting
is it doesn't allow our people to innovate. It makes it so the Chinese government.
An accidents reported in many places overnight. In New York City, the storm could bring as much as 4 inches of snow. We are on snow watch.
Yes, we are. Apparently something's happening outside, too. A funeral is underway now. A funeral in Dearborn, Michigan, for the former Democratic Congressman John Dingell, the longest-serving member of Congress ever. He passed away last week at the age of 92. Rick Leventhal is live there in Michigan with more. Rick?
Well, Bill, the funeral has actually been delayed because the bad weather is here in Dearborn and across the region as well. So the roads are a mess, flights have been delayed, and a lot of the well-wishers and mourners who were coming here to this church, they were late. So we're still waiting for the funeral procession to arrive. You can see a couple of fire trucks have extended their ladders and hung an American flag in honor of the congressman. We're waiting for the funeral procession, and we're told that a plane carrying some 90 congressional delegation, including apparently Speaker Pelosi and Senator Chuck Schumer, just landed a few minutes ago in Detroit. So we're waiting for those congressmen and senators to arrive here at the church, and then the funeral should be underway. We're told probably in just a few minutes or so, to honor Congressman John Dingell, who was the longest-serving U.S. congressman in the history of Congress. He was there for 59 years, almost 6 decades, before he stepped down back in 2015, and his wife, U.S. Rep. Debbie Dingell, took over for the congressman. He went to the hospital last week and died on Thursday. Dingell, who stood 6'3" tall, was known as Big John or the Truck for his hard-charging style in the halls of Congress. His father was a representative, and he was elected to his father's seat at the age of 29 back in 1955. Dingell also served in the U.S. Army near the end of World War II. He once said, "We are not important, the job is important." And over his lengthy career, he helped pass some legislation that shaped our country, including Medicare and the Clean Air Act, the Affordable Care Act, and what he considered most important, the Civil Rights Act back in 1964. But we heard from the congressman back in 2013 during his final term on the 50th anniversary of Medicare and Medicaid. Here's what he said.
Some 57 years ago, my fellow citizens elected me to serve in the Congress of the United States. This is the highest and most directly elected office in the Constitution. And I've been lucky to receive their trust 29 more times.
So again, we expect the funeral service for Congressman John Dingell to be underway here in a few minutes. A second ceremony will be held in Washington on Thursday, Bill, and then he will be laid to rest at Arlington National Cemetery.
Good to have you there. Thanks, Rick. Rick Leventhal, Dearborn, Michigan, with that. Thanks.
Fox News alert on the battle for the final ISIS stronghold in Syria. U.S.-backed coalition forces launching a key strike and ISIS mounting a surprising counter-offensive.
Also, does Congress have a deal on border security? And if so, what does the president think about it? There is a cabinet meeting about to begin at the White House. And as we mentioned that, Art Del Cueto is the vice president of the National Border Patrol Council. He's going to weigh in with his reaction coming up live next.
The Democrats came up with that because that means that you don't detain people that are very dangerous. That means you have to put them out into our society because our laws are so bad. And if you look at what happened and what's been passed over the years in Congress, it's a shame. It's a disgrace. That
make that much of a difference. You know where it made a big difference? Right here in El Paso. And I don't care whether a mayor is a Republican or a Democrat. They're full of crap when they say it hasn't made a big difference.
So there is the message, clear and simple, from El Paso last night. Not backing down any moment now. We may get new reaction from the president. There is a cabinet meeting about to begin at the White House. We're waiting for that. Members of Congress, meanwhile, apparently reaching a deal in principle on border security. That tentative deal reportedly includes about $1.3 billion for a barrier, much less than the nearly $6 billion the president wanted. Art Del Cueto is vice president of the National Border Patrol Council with me now. And, sir, welcome back to our program from Tucson, Arizona. You're always welcome here. Just want to know, I don't know what the deal looks like. I don't even know if they have a deal. I don't know what the president thinks about it. What do you think about it based on what you've heard?
You know, based on what I heard, there's still more that we need. We definitely need more of a barrier. There needs to be more funding for that barrier. And one of the things, you know, that hasn't been addressed also is we were very outspoken against the Obama administration and their immigration policies. And what that caused was a huge attrition rate amongst the agency and amongst the agents. Under Obama, we took a pay cut. Federal agents took a pay cut under that administration. In fact, Border Patrol agents, let's just be specific, took a pay cut. And we need to address losing these amount of agents. We have less agents now than we did when President Trump took over. So, I mean, obviously the barriers and the wall is huge, but there's other things that we also need to start addressing. And when I'm seeing and what I'm hearing of what they're willing to give budget-wise to the agents and to the agency, it's simply not enough.
I'm looking at 55 miles of more barrier. Do you accept that? I mean, based on your answer, I would say no. But why not take it piece by piece as we have gone on year after year, Art?
Because I think now we have an actual crisis at the border. We have caravan after caravan that are forming. We have unprecedented amounts of drugs that are coming into the country. We have more agents being attacked than we have before.
Now suggesting that was a moving of the goalposts at the last moment. Apparently during the negotiations, they cranked up the number yet again. You know Thomas Homan very well. Former ICE director said this about that with us a bit earlier today.
What they're not talking about is at the end of the year, they want to phase out all family beds, which means every family that crosses that border legally will be released directly from the border, not put into a family detention center where we screen them for measles, chickenpox, lice before they're released in the community. So until I see the language, I do not like this bill, and the president's getting nowhere near what he needs for that wall.
So based on what I read, it's around 50,000 beds, which is a lot more significant than 16,500 that were talked about over the weekend. Specific question. Why is this important? And what is a good number of beds in order to do the job right?
You know, I think at this point we just have to start concentrating on the actual laws that are on the books and start enforcing them. Perhaps get some individuals down there near the border start screening these individuals as they're crossing and seeing which cases are real cases of asylum and which are not. But obviously what we've been doing is not working. And to say this is all the funding you're going to get and not address more of the barrier situation, not address the attrition situation, it turns into a slap in the face to the many men and women out there that are putting their lives on the line on that border each and every day.
Wow. Final question. Do you think the president takes this deal or not, Art?
I wish I had a crystal ball, but the reality is there's a lot of things we need, and I do not believe that they're being addressed on this bill.
Thanks, Art. Art Del Cueto there in Tucson, Arizona. We'll see what the president has to say momentarily. We're going to hear his first comments on camera, so stay tuned, Art. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
The U.S.
In that country, Shanahan declined to say whether additional U.S. special forces could be brought to Iraq to compensate for the pullout from Syria, which is due to begin just within weeks. So certainly as the territorial battle against ISIS comes to an end, one eye on pulling U.S. troops out of Syria, another on keeping troops in the region to make sure that ISIS never return. Sandra?
Benjamin Hall, thank you.
22 minutes now before the hour. Bit of news in the NFL. Cleveland Browns making headlines, signing the troubled NFL running back Kareem Hunt to a one-year contract. Hunt was released by the Kansas City Chiefs back in November after a disturbing video had surfaced, made public, showing Hunt shoving and kicking a woman. In February of 2018, about a year ago, Hunt was not arrested. He's not facing criminal charges, but he's not able to play until an NFL investigation has been completed. He was probably, arguably, the best running back in the league at the time that news hit. All right, Sandra?
President Trump slamming the Democrats' Green New Deal, sparing no criticism for the plan or for its architects. Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez is one of them. Up next, one of the measure's first critics, Senator John Barrasso. He'll give us his take next.
Let's spend $100 trillion. Let's rip down every building in New York City and rebuild it environmentally slightly better to pave the way for socialism.
An alarming number of measles cases now reported. CDC confirming 22 new cases. Raises the nationwide total to 101 amid a growing debate over vaccinations as the highly contagious disease continues to spread among those who either were not vaccinated or have not gotten a booster shot. The outbreak hitting Washington state the hardest, 55 cases reported in that state.
They introduced the so-called Green New Deal. It sounds like a high school term paper that got a low mark. It would shut down American energy, which I don't think the people in Texas are going to be happy with that.
President Trump criticizing the Green New Deal last night in Texas, and it didn't go unnoticed. Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez firing right back at the president last night, defending her proposals on Twitter, saying this: "Ah, yes, a man who can't even read briefings written in full sentences is providing literary criticism of a House resolution." Let's bring in Senator John Barrasso, Republican Conference Chairman and Chairman of the Committee on Environment and Public Works, which makes your perspective on this even more unique. Senator, thank you for being here this morning. So she touts, and along with Ed Markey, who also co-authored this, they tout that this is going to transform the economy, that it's going to combat climate change, it's going to be a huge job creator, and you say it's what?
It's going to drive a stake through our economy. We have a strong and healthy and growing economy, and this takes us right off the cliff. I mean, the Democrats have taken such a hard left turn in their positions. This isn't a new deal. This is a raw deal. It's a bad deal for taxpayers. It's a bad deal for anybody that has to pay an electric bill or has to heat their home. And what they're proposing is so radical. All gas-powered cars off the road in 10 years. They're changing the entire transportation system in this country. The thing that's so interesting to me, Sandra, is how many of the Democrats running for president are copying off of her paper, are embracing this, and are heading right over the cliff with her.
I believe at last count, it's 6 Democrats running for president that have already announced or plan on doing so that have come out in support of this. Do you expect any Republicans to support the Green New Deal?
No, I can't imagine any Republican or any right-thinking person who realizes how energy is called the master resource for a reason, because it